Some people don't know how to fully enjoy things. Not because they lack reasons. Not because life hasn't offered them good moments. But because, the moment joy begins to appear, something inside tightens and guilt quietly takes its place. Maybe you recognize this feeling. You're calm, breathing a little easier. For a brief moment, everything feels okay. And then, without warning, something shifts inside you. A subtle discomfort. A tension that doesn't have a clear explanation. It's not a loud kind of guilt. It doesn't come with obvious thoughts. It's felt more in the body than in the mind. A weight in the chest. A restlessness that shows up precisely when you let your guard down. As if a part of you whispered, "Be careful. This won't last. Something's wrong." This space is not here to push you toward happiness. It's not here to demand positivity. It's not here to tell you that you should feel grateful or think differently. This space is here to listen. Because when joy is followed by guilt, it's not weakness. It's not ingratitude. It's not emotional immaturity. It's memory. Emotional memory. At some point in your life, feeling good may have come with consequences. Maybe calm was interrupted again and again. Maybe relaxing meant losing control. Maybe joy made you vulnerable. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where sacrifice was praised, but rest was not. Where effort was valued, but enjoyment felt uncomfortable. Where being strong was necessary, and being light was not allowed. Without realizing it, your body learned to stay alert. Your mind learned to anticipate. Your emotions learned to stay contained. So today, when a moment of well-being appears, something inside you activates to limit it, to shorten it, to keep it from going too far. Not because you don't deserve it, but because, at some point, allowing yourself to feel okay was risky. If you struggle to feel joy without guilt, you are not broken. You are not failing. You are repeating a form of protection that once made sense. In these cases, guilt is not a punishment. It's an old warning. A protective mechanism that continues working even when the danger is no longer there. Many people live like this for years without realizing it. They function. They perform. They endure. But they never fully inhabit the good moments. Not because they don't want to, but because something inside learned that joy was unsafe. Today, we're going to look at that gently, without judgment, without rushing. Because understanding why joy feels dangerous is the first step toward stopping the internal battle and beginning to listen to yourself with more compassion. For many people, guilt doesn't appear after doing something wrong. It appears when nothing is wrong at all. When things are quiet. When there's no crisis to solve. When life, for a moment, stops demanding something from you. It's a confusing kind of guilt. There's no clear reason for it. No mistake to point to. No obvious failure to correct. It shows up as a feeling rather than a thought. A subtle uneasiness. A sense that something is off, even when everything seems fine. You might feel it when you rest. When you sit still. When you allow yourself a moment without productivity. When you say, "I'm okay," and realize you actually mean it. In those moments, something inside you becomes alert. As if calm were unfamiliar territory. As if peace required supervision. Many people live with a constant internal vigilance. A background tension that never fully shuts off. A sense that you must always be prepared for what comes next. And when that vigilance softens, even briefly, guilt steps in. Not as a punishment, but as a reminder, a quiet signal that says, don't get too comfortable. This way of experiencing the world doesn't come from nowhere. It's built slowly through early emotional experiences, where safety wasn't consistent, where good moments were fragile, where calm was temporary. Some people grew up in emotionally tense environments, not necessarily chaotic or abusive, but heavy, full of worries, unspoken expectations, or emotional restraint. In those spaces, children learn to stay aware, to read the room, to notice shifts in mood, to avoid being a burden. Joy, in those contexts, can feel out of place. Laughing too freely, relaxing too deeply, enjoying without justification. All of it can create discomfort, not because it's wrong, but because it disrupts the emotional balance. Over time, the body makes an association. Feeling good equals risk. No one has to say it out loud. The nervous system learns it through repetition. Eventually, this logic becomes internal. Even when the environment changes, the inner pressure remains. Many people who feel guilty for being okay today were once very sensitive children, emotionally perceptive, highly attuned to the needs and moods of others. They learned to adapt, to hold back, to regulate themselves before anyone else had to. At the time, this was a form of intelligence, a way to stay safe, a way to belong. The problem arises when that strategy continues operating long after it's needed. Guilt then becomes automatic, not connected to real wrongdoing, but to an internal rule that says well-being must be monitored. Often, this guilt is tied to a sense of emotional debt, as if feeling good means owing something, as if comfort must be earned through effort or suffering. Some people feel guilty for being better off than others, for not struggling enough, for not carrying as much weight as they once did. Others feel guilty simply for not being useful, for resting, for not constantly proving their worth. In all these cases, the core issue is the same: difficulty inhabiting well-being without self-surveillance. The mind stays busy. The body remains tense. Emotions are kept in check. And when joy tries to emerge, something moves to contain it. Sometimes it shows up as thoughts. This won't last. I shouldn't feel this way. Something bad is coming. Sometimes it appears in the body. Tightness, restlessness, discomfort. Sometimes it turns into behavior. Interrupting rest, creating tasks, staying busy, avoiding stillness. None of this is random. It's a learned form of emotional regulation. Guilt serves a purpose. Keeps you within a familiar emotional range. Even if that range limits joy. Even if it feels heavy. Many people don't allow themselves to feel good because feeling good implies change. And change, even positive change, creates uncertainty. Staying in what's known, even when it hurts, can feel safer than stepping into something unfamiliar. That's why joy without guilt doesn't arrive all at once. First, there's resistance, suspicion, fear, and all of that belongs to the process. Understanding this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing the logic behind what you feel. No one struggles with guilt around joy without a history, without early learning, without a system that once protected them. And it's from this place of understanding that we can begin to look more closely at the deeper psychological roots of guilt, and the role repressed emotions play in shaping your relationship with joy. From a deeper psychological perspective, guilt is not always connected to actions. Very often, it's connected to desire. The desire to feel okay. The desire to rest. The desire to live with less tension. The desire to experience joy without having to justify it. For some people, these desires are not neutral. They carry emotional weight, old meanings, invisible rules that were learned long before they were understood. In these cases, guilt functions as an internal boundary, a quiet line that says, "You can go this far, but no further." Not because joy is wrong, but because it threatens a structure that took years to build. Many people have organized their sense of worth around endurance, around responsibility, around being the one who holds everything together, being strong, being reliable, being the one who doesn't collapse. Within this identity, joy can feel dangerous, like letting go of control, like abandoning a role that once provided safety and belonging. If your value was built on surviving, what happens when survival is no longer the main task? If your identity was shaped by effort and vigilance, what does rest even mean? Guilt appears to prevent that internal disorientation, to preserve coherence, to keep the familiar structure intact. Psychologically speaking, guilt protects an internal order. Even when that order becomes restrictive, even when it limits emotional freedom, there is another layer to this dynamic. For many people, moments of joy in the past were followed by loss, disappointment, or emotional rupture. Calm was temporary. Happiness didn't last. Good moments were fragile. The psyche learns through association, and when joy precedes pain often enough, it becomes something to manage rather than embrace. Not consciously, automatically. Joy becomes something to control, to monitor, to keep small. Guilt plays a regulatory role here. It prevents joy from expanding too far, keeps emotional intensity within a safe range. At the same time, repressed emotions play a central role. What could not be expressed earlier does not disappear. It remains stored, seeking a way to surface. Unspoken anger, unprocessed grief, unacknowledged fear. When joy emerges, it can activate these buried layers, as if the emotional system were saying, "There is unfinished business." Guilt becomes the language through which these unresolved emotions speak. It's not that joy is the problem. It's that joy touches areas that were never fully integrated. That's why some people feel uneasy when things are going well, as if something were out of place, as if it weren't the right time to feel good. On an unconscious level, this discomfort makes sense. It's an attempt to preserve internal balance. Guilt is also deeply relational. Our emotional world is shaped by others, by relationships, attachments, and internalized figures from the past. Feeling good can unconsciously feel like separation, like moving ahead, like being better than those who suffered. This creates conflict. The psyche seeks connection and belonging, and when joy threatens those bonds, even symbolically, guilt steps in to restore loyalty. It's not a malfunction. It's a solution that once worked. The problem is not that you developed this solution. The problem is that it hasn't been updated. And it can't be updated through force, only through understanding. Understanding what guilt protects, what it remains loyal to, what it fears losing if it lets go. Only then can your relationship with joy begin to shift. Not by demanding happiness, not by silencing guilt, but by creating internal safety, where well-being is no longer experienced as a threat, In the next block, we'll look at how this dynamic shows up in your present life, and what happens internally when you try, again and again, to allow yourself to feel okay. In everyday life, this conflict rarely appears as something dramatic. It doesn't always show up as anxiety attacks or emotional crises. More often, it lives in small moments, subtle decisions, quiet interruptions of well-being. You might notice it when you finally have free time and feel compelled to fill it, when rest feels uncomfortable, when silence makes you uneasy, when calm feels harder to tolerate than stress. Joy, when it appears, does so carefully. It doesn't demand space. It doesn't insist. It gently approaches. And that's when the internal system reacts. A tension arises. A thought interrupts the moment. A need for control returns, as if a part of you were saying, "Don't relax too much. This isn't the time. Don't get used to this." This inner conflict is not a lack of willpower. It's not self-sabotage in the simplistic sense. It's a collision between two deep needs. On one side, the genuine desire for relief, for ease, for a life that feels lighter. On the other, the need for safety, for predictability, for remaining loyal to what once kept you emotionally grounded. For many people, feeling good threatens their sense of identity. Without tension, they don't know who they are. Without struggle, they feel disoriented. Pain, however difficult, is familiar. Calm is not. So the conflict doesn't resolve itself by simply choosing happiness. Because this isn't a conscious decision. It's an internal reorganization that takes time. When joy emerges, it challenges old rules. It questions inherited beliefs. It destabilizes long-standing emotional roles. And that creates fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of becoming vulnerable. Many people learned that feeling okay meant lowering their guard. And in their history, lowering their guard came with consequences. So even when the present is safe, the body reacts as if it weren't. Here's something essential to understand. Guilt is not trying to destroy joy. It's trying to regulate it. It doesn't say, "Don't be happy." It says, "Not too much. Not yet. Not like this." And in doing so, it limits emotional experience. This conflict becomes especially visible in moments of growth. In relationships that feel nourishing. In projects that begin to work. In periods where life starts to flow. Every time something good expands, something inside pulls back. Sometimes through doubt. Sometimes through exhaustion. Sometimes through subtle forms of self-interruption. The mind finds reasons. The body expresses symptoms. Emotion retreats. All of it to avoid crossing an internal threshold that feels unsafe. Many people ask themselves why anxiety shows up when things are going well. Why achievements feel empty. Why peace never seems to last. The answer is not in the present moment. It's in emotional memory. In how joy was once linked to danger, loss, or emotional rupture. This conflict doesn't resolve by fighting guilt. It transforms through listening. By asking, gently, what is this guilt trying to protect? What is it loyal to? What does it fear would happen if it disappeared? Often, guilt protects internalized relationships. Images of caregivers. Family narratives. Silent rules about what is allowed and what is not. Feeling good can feel like disobedience. And disobedience, even internal, creates fear. But emotional growth requires revisiting those obediences. Not to destroy them, but to update them. Because you are no longer the person who needed to suppress joy in order to survive. You have more resources now, more awareness, more choice. The conflict exists because one part of you lives in the past, while another is trying to live in the present. Guilt stands between these two timelines, trying to prevent rupture, trying to keep things from changing too fast. Understanding this doesn't immediately dissolve the conflict, but it softens it. It removes the idea that something is wrong with you. And when guilt is no longer treated as an enemy, the system no longer needs to defend itself so fiercely. In the final block, we'll talk about how to begin building a different relationship with joy. Not by forcing it, not by demanding it, but by allowing it to exist, slowly, without feeling like a threat. If you're still here, there's something important I want you to hear. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling guilt when things are going well. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you lack gratitude. It doesn't mean you don't know how to appreciate life. It means you carry a story, an emotional story that was written at a time when protection mattered more than pleasure, when staying alert felt safer than relaxing, when holding everything together was more important than letting go. So the first act of care is not changing what you feel. It's stopping the fight against it. You don't need to force yourself to feel good. You don't need to convince yourself that everything is fine. You don't need to justify your joy. Joy without guilt doesn't arrive through effort. It doesn't come from discipline or mindset. It grows through permission. Small permissions. Quiet ones. Almost unnoticeable. Like staying a few seconds longer in a calm moment, even if it feels unfamiliar. Like not interrupting rest the moment it begins. Like noticing guilt without immediately obeying it. At first, joy may feel mixed with tension. It may not last long. It may retreat quickly. That's okay. Your emotional system didn't organize itself overnight. And it won't reorganize itself instantly. It needs time. It needs repetition. It needs experiences where nothing bad happens when you allow yourself to feel okay. Each time you let yourself rest and nothing collapses, something inside learns. Each time you enjoy a moment and don't punish yourself afterward, something shifts. Each time you don't rush back into effort, your body records safety. This isn't about abandoning your past. It's about updating it. You can honor what you lived through without continuing to live the same way. You can respect the part of you that survived without letting it run your entire life. Feeling good doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't disconnect you from others. It doesn't erase your sensitivity. In fact, people who can inhabit their well-being tend to be more present, more emotionally available, more grounded in relationships. Often, guilt is protecting an old form of love, an old way of belonging, a loyalty to suffering that once connected you to others. But today, you can belong without disappearing. You can care without carrying everything. You can love without hurting yourself. If joy scares you, don't push it away, and don't chase it either. Approach it with curiosity, like something new you're learning to trust. You don't need intense happiness. You don't need constant positivity. Sometimes, all that's needed is a quiet sense of, nothing is wrong right now. Joy without guilt is not excitement. It's ease. It's the feeling that, for a moment, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to compensate for existing. And when guilt shows up, don't reject it. Notice it. Ask gently, what is this part of me trying to protect? That question, asked without judgment, is already a form of healing. You're not alone in this experience. Many people carry this same internal conflict in silence, believing something is wrong with them. There isn't. This is a deeply human process. Complex. Layered. And the fact that you're able to sit with these words already says something about your capacity for awareness. Maybe today you still struggle to feel joy without guilt. But perhaps you can begin by not feeling guilty for struggling. That, too, is a form of permission. Let yourself go slowly. Let yourself learn another way of being. Let yourself discover that feeling okay is not a failure. It's a possibility. And when that possibility begins to feel just a little safer, even briefly, something inside you will know it no longer has to protect you so fiercely. And in that space, without forcing it, joy will find room to exist.